Welcome back to Cars and Coffee. In this video, I'll be disassembling this coilover. We'll go over what components there are in most coilovers, how to adjust ride height, how to adjust preload, how to disassemble, replace parts. Hopefully you find this video helpful or entertaining. Let's get started. Most coilovers consist of 5 components: top hat, spring, shock absorber, locking collars, and a base. On this coilover, and most coilovers, you'll have 3 locking collars. This one is used to lock the base to the shock. These 2 right here are to set the preload for the spring. One is a preload adjuster and one is a lock. If this has never been assembled on a vehicle, these locking collars most likely will be loose. I like to break them loose before removing them out of a vehicle. First step to take this apart, we're going to try to remove all the preload from the spring itself. To do that, we're going to back off this locking collar as far as we can. Then we'll take our spanner wrench and back off our preload collar. So, once we have our spring completely loose, we can start working on removing the top hat. Some coilovers do not have adjustable dampening. This does. Some just pull out. BCs, for some reason, have a nut that screws on to the shock. We'll take our wrench, which is a thin-walled 14 on BCs, just break it loose. Comes right out. Great. Now we can work on removing the top hat nut. If you have power tools and the nut isn't corroded much, it should come up fairly easy. Just like so. Remove our top hat. The BCs have a 2-piece top hat. The upper part has the spherical bearing. The bottom hat has a normal bearing set in place to allow smooth steering. At the top and bottom, we also have a spring spacer or bushing made out of plastic to prevent noise. We can remove our spring. I always like to mark the top. That way, when I'm reassembling, always goes back the right way. And here we have our shock, locking collars, and the base. We can remove our boot. Careful, because you have your bump stop from the inside. You'll want to make sure you put it back the correct way. This is the top. Now we can remove our base. Move the locking collar upwards and spin the base off. Now we can fully remove our locking collars. One, two, and 3. The reason I'm taking all this apart is because my customer wants to go lower, and these were bottomed out. There is a stopper in this style base, which prevents the shock from threading all the way through. Other style shocks do have a complete thread throughs. If they were to drill them out, I would say it would cause a safety issue because the metal would be too thin. So they do have shorter shocks. They are about 1.25 inches shorter. Yeah, let's start assembling. What I like to do first, I like to go through the used parts and kind of clean them up from all the old anti-seize and gunk that builds up. You can use a microfiber. If you want to go crazy about it, go get some brake clean and clean it all thoroughly. But a good wipe down is basically all you need. Now for the assembly, always get yourself some nice anti-seize. That way when you do want to ever readjust, they don't ever get stuck on you. You don't have to sit there with heat and possibly buying new parts. Doesn't have to be fully coated all around. The threads on the collars will help distribute around all the threads. So we'll start with the preload collar. Once we get to the halfway mark, we'll be taking our preload lock collar and we'll thread that one on. Once we get it close, we can start threading on our ride height lock collar. And we can thread on our base. Before that, I will also add a little bit more of this anti-seize, just because I have seen a lot of these things seize up, and yeah, I've had customers who had to throw away their 2-year-old coilovers because they're stuck on the lowest setting. Once you have a nice liberal coating, you're going to take your base and also, as before, thread it on. Okay, once we're most of the way threaded through, we are going to start assembling the top part, which is the spring and the top hat. We'll be using a silicone-based lube on these spacers. Spacers, bushings, a lot of people call them different things. They're just to prevent any noise when the spring does turn. You will have slight movement in the spring no matter what you do. Our bump stop. Clean it out a little. Put it exactly as it was. Then our boot goes right after. Then we'll put our spring on. Top is marked. Set it to the side. Take our spacer, bushing, give it some grease. Install it in our top hat. Put our top hat on. We'll have a little bit of play depending on where you set your preload adjuster at. Reinstall our top hat. Make sure it's fully seated properly, just like so. Put our top hat nut back on. Now you can torque this to spec. I'm not sure what VC recommends the torquing down to. Me, I just use an impact. It's good. After that is set, we can take our dampening adjuster, reinstall it as well. tricky sometimes catching the threads on those. I'll take our modified 13, which is actually a 14 now, and just tighten it so it doesn't come loose from vibrations. Now we will be setting the preload for the spring. Preload is the amount of tension that is on the spring when there is no load on the strut itself. First, we'll snug up the preload collar. By the way, some coilovers do not come with a ride height adjustment. I believe teen, if I'm not mistaken. Never adjust your ride height using the preload collar and locking collar. A lot of people do it, and then you have a bunch of clunking and premature shock failure. I'm going to turn until it's just finger tight. So now the spring is moving together with my finger. We'll bring down our locking collar. To set the preload on any coilover. What you're going to do is get it finger tight like I just did. We will mark the top collar. You want to lock your ride height collar. Using the spanner. Doesn't have to be crazy tight, just tight enough. Then, using the larger spanner, we will be tightening the preload collar 2 full turns. Just around there. So you start feeling a decent amount of resistance from the spring. You don't really want to go too much because you reduce your amount of travel. A lot of people say that adjusting your preload does mess with your spring rates. It's not true at all. Spring rate does not change depending on the compression of your spring. That all has to do with the type of metal that's used on the spring and how it is heat treated. So after we set our preload, we'll take our locking collar and lock it in place. Get as snug as you can. That's that. That's preload set. To adjust your ride height, make sure your locking collar for the ride height adjuster is fully loose, depending on if you want to lift the car or lower the car. You will be either threading down or unthreading the base, which will in sense shorten or lengthen your entire coilover. This particular setup, he wants them maxed out low, so we will be maxing them out. Okay, once we've reached the bottom, some coilovers do bottom out like this one. Some go past the bottom and thread through. This is only pertains to the ones that lock at the bottom, so hit a dead stop. You want to basically thread them on all the way to the bottom and just back them off just slightly so they're not completely sitting at the bottom, because sometimes they do like to seize on there. After you've set your desired ride height, you're going to go and take your locking collar for your ride height and lock it into place. If you want to make further adjustments of your ride height, after you install it on the vehicle, you will drop your vehicle down, let it settle for like 20 to 30 minutes, then estimate about 20 to 50 millimeter drop after fully settling. Adjusting the ride height on the vehicle is a little bit easier as the base is bolted onto the knuckle. You would basically unlock your ride height locking collar. And then to lift up the coilover, you'll be using the bottom locking collar for the preload adjuster to turn the shock upwards. Also, if you were to go down per se, you'll be using the top of the preload collar to basically screw in the entire shock. That's basically it. It's fairly simple. If you guys enjoyed this video, please like, comment, subscribe. If you guys want to see more content like this, I'll be having more how-tos, more in-depth videos in the future. So Thanks for watching.